What started as a light-hearted interview turned into a brutal clash when Stephen Colbert relentlessly mocked Elon Musk's companies, sparking a fiery meltdown on national television that nobody saw coming. The tension was thick before Elon Musk even stepped onto the stage. Stephen Colbert, with that sly glint in his eye, was already loading his arsenal, smiling a little too widely as the audience cheered. Musk, dressed in a simple black blazer and open-collared shirt, strode onto the set with his usual stoic coolness, offering Colbert a firm handshake. At first it seemed like just another late-night interview, but the smiles were brittle, the laughter forced, and the air between them practically crackled. Stephen opened with a couple of typical softball questions about Mars and Neuralink, which Musk answered with mechanical politeness. But then the knives came out. "So," Stephen said, leaning forward with that mock earnestness he had mastered, "how's it going leading the world's most expensive game of Sim City? Last I checked, Tesla's stock was dropping faster than a SpaceX prototype without a parachute." The audience laughed, not sure if they were supposed to. Musk gave a tight smile, but the muscle in his jaw twitched. He tried to play along, responding dryly, "Well, progress is never a straight line." Stephen nodded theatrically. "No, of course, especially when the line looks more like a ski slope in the Alps." The crowd roared this time, emboldened by Colbert's daring. Musk's face darkened slightly. Still he maintained his composure, shifting in his seat. Stephen, sensing the crack, pushed harder. "You know, I gotta ask," he continued, tapping his note cards dramatically, "between Twitter becoming what my aunt would call a hot mess, and your latest Cybertruck unbreakable glass demo ending with broken glass, are you secretly running a social experiment to test how much embarrassment a billionaire can endure before he just buys a new planet to hide on?" The audience howled. Musk chuckled stiffly, his laugh sounding more like a growl caught in his throat. "Look," Musk said, leaning in a little now, his voice tightening, "innovation involves failure. It's easy to mock from the sidelines." Colbert raised his hands in mock surrender. "Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But you have to admit, it is a little funny when the guy promising humanity's salvation can't even keep a car door handle from freezing. In winter." There it was. A visible flicker of anger crossed Musk's face. The confrontation had officially begun. "Stephen," Musk said in a clipped tone, "you are a comedian, and I guess comedians need material. Maybe if you actually tried to solve real problems instead of just making jokes about them, you would understand." Colbert laughed sharply. "You're right. I should have founded a car company that turns into a meme whenever it snows." The audience erupted again, and Musk visibly tensed. A vein in his forehead pulsed. He adjusted his mic, as if restraining himself from just walking off right then and there. But he stayed, teeth gritted, his knuckles whitening around the arms of his chair. Stephen was not done. Not by a long shot. He shuffled his cards theatrically again, feigning deep seriousness. "Speaking of solving problems," he said, "how's the Boring Company doing? Because I read somewhere that even earthworms are outperforming your tunneling speeds. No offense to the worms." Musk's smile this time was pure ice. He leaned back stiffly in his chair. "Well," Musk said with heavy sarcasm, "good to know you're getting your information from TikTok headlines." Stephen grinned wolfishly. "Oh no, not just TikTok, Elon. I've been reading Reddit too. It's like your unofficial fan club and roast club rolled into one." "Fascinating ecosystem, really?" The audience howled again, some whistling, some gasping. Musk's patience was visibly fraying. He leaned in, his voice lowering. "You know," Musk said, "I employ hundreds of thousands of people. I am pushing humanity toward a multi-planetary existence. What exactly is your contribution again?" Besides smugness, there was a heavy pause. Even the band fell silent. Stephen smiled, slow and cruel. "Well, tonight, apparently, my contribution is giving the richest Man in the world, a reality check he clearly has not had in a while. Musk's hands clenched and unclenched. His jaw tightened until it looked painful. The air was electric now, the audience sensing they were witnessing something more than just an edgy interview. Something was brewing, something bigger. And Stephen, smelling blood in the water, leaned in closer still. "Tell me, Elon," he said, lowering his voice mock-conspiratorially, "when you bought Twitter and promised free speech, was that before or after you started banning people for making fun of you?" A murmur rippled through the audience. Musk's face flushed red. His breathing quickened. He opened his mouth to respond, then snapped it shut, visibly struggling to keep it together. Colbert sat back, tapping his note cards on his knee, looking thoroughly pleased with himself. Musk, meanwhile, looked like a volcano about to blow. The tension was unbearable. Even watching from home, you could feel it. That coiled energy right before everything explodes. And explode it would, because Stephen Colbert was just getting started. Stephen leaned forward, resting his elbows casually on his desk, tilting, his head with mock sympathy. "It's tough being a genius, huh? Especially when nobody understands your, grand vision to charge people $8 a month for a blue check mark." The audience burst out laughing again, some even booing playfully. Musk's expression twisted into something that was not quite a smile and not quite a snarl. He took a slow breath, visibly trying to reel himself back in, but the damage was already done. "I mean," Stephen continued, tapping the desk with his pen, "Twitter used to be a town square, sure, a little messy, a little chaotic, but still. Now it's like you bought the town square and decided to turn it into a flea market where every booth is just someone yelling about Dogecoin." Musk finally spoke, his voice clipped and cold. "Running companies, real companies, is complicated. Stephen, you sit behind a desk and mock people who actually build things. You think that makes you better?" The audience let out an uneasy "ooh," sensing how personal it had just gotten. Colbert's smile never wavered. "I'm not saying I'm better," Stephen said smoothly. "I'm just saying maybe, if you're going to set yourself up as a visionary savior of humanity, you should have a little more vision, and a little less savior complex." Musk's laugh came out as a sharp bark. "Savior complex? That's rich coming from someone who preaches nightly to people looking for a bedtime story about how bad everything is." That got a few scattered laughs from the crowd, but the energy had shifted. This wasn't playful anymore. It was war. Stephen, sensing the audience hesitating, leaned harder into his attack. "Come on, Elon. You're the guy who said we'd have self-driving cars by 2020. We're halfway through 2025, and my Roomba still has better spatial awareness than a Tesla on autopilot." The crowd howled again, more confidently this time, and Musk visibly stiffened. "I didn't realize you were a technical expert now," Musk shot back. "I'm not," Colbert replied with a shrug. "But apparently neither are the people programming your cars." The audience erupted, some rising from their seats, sensing that they were witnessing television history being made in real time. Musk turned in his seat, visibly sizing Colbert up now, as if debating whether to stay or walk out. His face was flushed, and he fiddled with his microphone wire, tugging it unconsciously. Stephen pushed on. "And let's not even get started on the Hyperloop," he said, drawing out the word dramatically. "Because who among us hasn't dreamed of being shot through a vacuum tube at breakneck speeds, only for the entire thing to end up being, what, a glorified subway idea that New York already did 100 years ago?" There was a sharp intake of breath from the audience. Even the cameraman briefly zoomed in tighter on Musk's face, catching the fury flashing in his eyes. "You don't understand innovation," Musk said tightly. "You don't understand the risks we take, the sacrifices we make." Stephen's smile widened. "Oh, I get it. I really do. Sacrifices like Tesla investors watching their life savings tank faster than your reputation on Twitter." Boom. It landed like a punch to the gut. Musk's hand moved sharply, ripping the microphone cord from his collar. The movement was so sudden, so raw, it stunned the room into silence for a beat. The mic dangled from his hand as he stared at Colbert, breathing heavily. "You know what?" Musk said, voice shaking with anger. "I don't have to sit here and be insulted by a late-night court jester who thinks he's clever because he reads cue cards written by a dozen people." There was a gasp, and a few awkward claps scattered through the crowd. Colbert just raised an eyebrow, the picture of faux innocence. "Oh, come on, Elon. We're just having a little fun. You know, like that time you smoked a joint on Joe Rogan's podcast and Tesla shares dropped 7% overnight?" The audience screamed with laughter, some people practically falling out of their chairs. Musk slammed his microphone down on the chair, standing up, towering over Stephen, who remained seated, cool as a cucumber. "You're a joke," Musk spat, his voice low but furious. "A bitter, irrelevant joke." Stephen's smile dropped for just a half-second, replaced by something sharper, colder. "Maybe," he said, rising to his feet slowly, deliberately, facing Musk, eye to eye. "But at least I know when the joke's on me. You still think you're the hero of a story no one's buying anymore." Musk opened his mouth, closed it again. He looked out at the audience, who were half cheering, half buzzing with stunned energy. It was over. He knew it. Everyone knew it. Without another word, Elon turned and stormed off stage, his footsteps heavy and uneven, like each one carried the weight of humiliation he hadn't expected to feel tonight. Security, already on high alert, from the escalating tension, discreetly moved to guide him toward the backstage exit. But Musk waved them off, yanking open the door himself with a violent shove that made the whole set shudder. The door slammed behind him with a sound that echoed into stunned silence. Colbert turned back to his desk, straightened his jacket, and, after a beat, looked directly into the camera. "Well," he said with a smirk, "guess some launches just don't go as planned." The crowd erupted into a standing ovation, chanting Stephen's name. It was pure chaos, pure theater, and pure late-night gold. But the fallout was only just beginning. Because while Elon Musk had left the building, the internet was just getting warmed up. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, clips of the confrontation flooded every corner of social media. Twitter, ironically, was the first to explode, with trending hashtags like Colbert roasts Musk, meltdown at midnight, and the savage Elon unplugged shooting to the top of the platform Musk himself had famously bought. One 15-second clip, Musk ripping off his microphone and storming off stage, racked up over 1 million views within the hour. Memes sprouted like weeds. One showed Musk's face superimposed over a SpaceX rocket crashing into the ground, captioned, "Another successful launch." Another meme had Stephen in a king's robe, Musk bowing before him holding a blue Twitter checkmark, like a defeated knight offering his sword. By the next morning, every major outlet was running headlines. "Colbert sends Musk into orbit." "Without a rocket," screamed one. "Late-night bloodbath, Musk humiliated." Live on national TV posted another. Podcasts, YouTubers, morning shows. Everyone was dissecting every second of the clash like it was the Zapruder film. Analysts debated whether Musk's career had finally hit a wall. Others defended him, calling Colbert's jabs below the belt, and accusing the host of turning an interview into a personal attack. But most, it seemed, were just reveling in the sheer spectacle of it all. Meanwhile, back at the Ed Sullivan Theater, Stephen Colbert wasn't celebrating. He was sitting in his office, scrolling through his phone with a blank expression. His producers buzzed around him, ecstatic, shouting over each other about viral numbers, increased ad buys, and incoming requests for interviews. Stephen just sat there, watching clip after clip of himself smirking at Musk, each video snappier, crueler, louder than the last. "Are we the bad guys now?" he muttered under his breath, mostly to himself. The Thought hung in the air for a moment, until his head writer, Dave, clapped him hard on the shoulder. "Bad guys?" Dave said with a bark of laughter. "You kidding? You're a folk hero, man. You said what everyone's been too scared to say for years." Stephen nodded absently, still scrolling. Part of him knew Dave was right. Musk had gone unchecked. For too long. Buying up companies, making wild promises, dodging accountability with a shrug and a tweet. Someone had to call him out. Still, there was something about the way Musk had looked at him. Like a man genuinely wounded, not just bruised in ego, but hit somewhere deeper, that gnawed at the edge of Stephen's triumph. His phone buzzed. With a call. It was the network president. "Stephen, my man," the voice blared through the speaker. "Tonight's ratings? Through the roof. Seriously, they're calling it the late-night event of the decade." "Glad to hear it," Stephen said. Voice carefully neutral. The president's tone shifted, lowering a notch. "Listen, we're getting some blowback, too. Musk's PR team is calling it a staged ambush. They're talking legal options, probably just noise, but be ready." Stephen leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Legal threats. Of course. He rubbed his temples. "Let them talk," Stephen said eventually. "The tape speaks for itself." And it did. Every replay showed the same thing. A host doing his job. Yes, pushing hard. Maybe too hard. And a billionaire crumbling under pressure. But the war wasn't just playing out on TV screens anymore. It had spilled onto the streets. That night, outside the theater, crowds gathered waving homemade signs. "Team Colbert," read one. "Make billionaires cry again," read another. Someone even parked a beat-up Tesla Model S with a giant cardboard cutout of Stephen sticking out the sunroof, waving. Like a parade king, but not everyone was celebrating. Across town, in a sleek, glass-walled penthouse overlooking Manhattan, Elon Musk sat in the dark, the only light coming from the blue glow of multiple monitors, flashing news reports, and Twitter feeds. His team hovered nearby, whispering nervously, afraid to speak unless spoken to. Musk's jaw was clenched, his foot tapping rapidly against the floor in agitation. Finally, he stood, pacing. "They think this is funny," Musk said, almost to himself. "They think I'm finished because of one bad night." One of his advisors stepped forward cautiously. "We could issue a statement, frame it as bias. Say Colbert attacked you because of your political views, your stance on free speech." Musk stopped pacing and stared at him, eyes cold and bright. "No," the advisor blinked. "No?" Musk shook his head. "Statements are for losers. I'm going to show them." He stalked over to his computer, hands flying over the keyboard. Within minutes, a new tweet hit his personal account. "Never forget, kings are crowned by fools. Real change is made by those who build, not by those who joke." The tweet went instantly, viral, but not in the way Musk probably intended. Replies poured in, mocking, savage, unforgiving. "Bro, you got bodied by a talk show host. Go invent a thicker skin. You're not Tony Stark. You're the villain in Iron Man 2. Cry harder. Tunnel boy." It was a disaster. A full-on PR meltdown. Inside his penthouse, Musk slammed the laptop shut so hard the screen cracked. Across the city, Stephen was preparing for the next night's show, knowing full well Musk's retaliation had only just begun, because billionaires do not go quietly, they go to war. Backstage, the atmosphere was electric but uneasy. Producers scurried around with frantic energy, passing updated monologues to Stephen, each more cautious than the last. His head writer handed him a fresh stack of punchlines but hesitated before speaking. "You sure you want to double down?" Dave asked. "Musk is not gonna let this go." Stephen glanced at the cards, then tossed them onto the table without reading them. "I'm not backing down," he said simply. "If he wants to make this a war, fine. But I'm not apologizing for doing my job." Dave nodded slowly, but the tension was thick. They all knew this wasn't just another celebrity feud. This was about power, about who controlled the narrative. Meanwhile, Musk was orchestrating his counterattack. From a rented war room filled with PR strategists, lawyers, and tech operatives, Musk had launched a full-scale assault. Influencers loyal to him began flooding social media with posts blasting Colbert as corporate media, accusing him of staging the confrontation for ratings. Bot accounts churned out thousands of tweets calling for a boycott of Colbert's sponsors. Even fringe news outlets picked up the charge, painting Musk as a martyr who had been ambushed by Hollywood elites. Within hours, a protest had been organized outside the theater. A few dozen Musk supporters, waving homemade signs that read "Free Speech Matters" and "Late Night Lies," gathered, shouting into bullhorns and drawing plenty of cameras. Inside, the staff watched the growing chaos on the monitors, anxiety creeping in. Stephen, standing in the wings, adjusted his cuffs and breathed deeply. The walk to the stage had never felt longer. The band struck up its usual jazzy tune. The applause sign lit up, and Stephen stepped out into the storm. The crowd, loyal and loud, roared with applause. But even he could sense the tension rippling. Through the room, like static, he launched into his monologue without hesitation. "So, quick question," Stephen said, pacing the stage. "Has anyone here ever accidentally hurt a billionaire's feelings and accidentally broken the internet at the same time?" The crowd erupted with laughter and cheers. Stephen smiled tightly. "Look," he said, growing more serious, "I know there's been a lot of noise in the last 24 hours. A lot of very powerful people are very, very upset. They're saying I was unfair, that I was rude, that I was biased." He paused, letting the silence settle. "And maybe I was a little rude," he admitted, shrugging. "But rude is calling someone out when no one else will. Rude is asking hard questions instead of kissing the ring." The audience clapped louder now, sensing the emotional turn. "You know what's easy?" Stephen continued. "Easy is pretending everything a billionaire says is genius because you're afraid of losing your job, or your sponsorships, or your Twitter account." The crowd murmured in agreement. "But if standing up here and making jokes that hold a mirror up to power makes me a villain, then fine. I'll wear that cape proudly." Thunderous applause shook the room. People rose from their seats again, chanting his name. Backstage, producers breathed a sigh of relief. Stephen had threaded the needle, acknowledging the controversy without bending the knee. But the battle wasn't over yet. That night, Musk fired his final shot. A statement posted on his social media accounts read, "I have no interest in feeding into negativity. While others play games, I will continue to focus on building a better future. Good luck to those who believe cheap laughs are worth more than progress." It was classic Musk, aloof, dismissive, and vaguely sanctimonious. But this time, it didn't land. The replies were brutal. Progress isn't an excuse for acting like a spoiled kid. Imagine thinking you're above criticism because you launched a car into space once. Build a thicker skin, bro. It was clear. The tide of public sentiment had shifted. The myth of Elon Musk, the untouchable tech messiah, had taken a real hit. And Stephen Colbert, for all his sharp tongue and brutal jokes, had simply held up the mirror. In the days that followed, the noise began to fade. Musk retreated back into his companies, focusing on upcoming projects and carefully avoiding any public references to Colbert or the meltdown. Stephen continued his show, sharper than ever, but never gloating about the encounter. He didn't need to. The audience knew. The industry knew. Everyone who had seen it unfold live or on replay knew. This was not a story about a late-night host defeating a billionaire. It was a story about what happens when you strip away the bravado, the money, the followers, and find out who is left standing. Stephen didn't just survive the firestorm. He walked through it, head high, smirking at the absurdity of it all. The confrontation had started with a few sharp jokes. It ended with a clear, undeniable truth. Sometimes, the mightiest man in the room is not the one with the money, the rocket, ships, or the fanboys. Sometimes it is simply the one who refuses to be afraid. As Stephen closed out that night's show, he looked into the camera, offered a tiny, knowing wink, and said, "Good night, everybody. Stay strong. And remember, you can't buy dignity. You have to earn it." The screen faded to black, the music swelled, and the legend of that night became history, a confrontation for the ages, finished, sealed, and immortalized.